Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the sessions where I am writing a song from start to finish, mainly using Eduardo Tarante's Nada, his new age library. Can be used for so many things, though. I mean, could be used for video games, background enhancers to all kinds of music. But the design of the sounds is very much in the vein of new age music, which I love, and so does Eduardo. Very talented composer, too, by the way. And you can get his stuff. The link will be in the show notes, but at bestservice.com. So we have a different looking screen right now. We have bounced everything down to audio. There was no reason, like I said in the last video, for me to make you guys sit there and watch me bounce every single track. I have gone back through and listened to the whole thing. All the tracks burned very well. You always want to do that before you take the step I'm about to take. Make sure that everything burned properly. If not, you can delete it, reburn any track or tracks that you need to. So now that we have all the audio burned, so again, the MIDI tracks are the ones that are muted here. They're all flat lines. The audio are either in stereo, which you've got left and right, or they are in mono. Some of the percussion and things I didn't necessarily want in stereo, so they're just a mono straightforward signal. So that being the case, the next thing that we want to do now that we verified the audio data is to get rid of all the things that are going to weigh the system down. So we no longer need the MIDI tracks. I've saved those in two other versions, the main version of the file before I burned it to audio. And also, if you remember, I exported it as a MIDI. So we have two versions of the MIDI track in case anything goes wrong. We need to create the song. We've got two backups. And of course, I'm going to back these up to multiple drives. So I'll have at the end of all this, I'll have like 6 copies of everything. So that way I'm very, well, not everything, but that way I'm very secure that if I ever lose one drive or one version of it or whatever, I've always got backups. I will never lose this piece of music one way or another. So that being said, the next thing that we want to do is we want to get rid of all this stuff. So what we're looking at getting rid of is the MIDI tracks. All of those, because we've burned them to audio, we no longer need them. We also are looking at getting rid of the sound generators, because now that we've burned the audio, we no longer need to send MIDI data through Engine or Play to generate any of the audio, because we have audio. So the easiest way to do that in Cakewalk by BandLab, and it's going to be different in each one of your programs, we have under tracks what is called the track manager. Duh. And then a real easy way of selecting things to make things go more quickly. So the first thing that we want to do is just select all the audio tracks, and we're going to hide them. So now all we're looking at, wow, it got rid of my play also. All right, let's go back and see why. I'm kind of glad that happened, because it must have been checked by mistake. So, oh yeah, no, there's play and engine. Oh, play was unchecked. That's why it's not there. Okay. Boom, there it is, it's back. So here are all the MIDI tracks, all the audio tracks are buried, and then engine and play. So the easiest thing to do here is to just highlight all of them like this, right click, delete 15 tracks, bye-bye. So now we go back to the track manager. The only thing that we should have left is audio. So we select audio. We don't need the metronome and we don't need preview. We're gonna get to this in a minute. We just want all the audio, so select all the audio, and now we just have the audio tracks, which is really all we want. And we can expand these so that we can look at them. We can look at them in greater detail here if we want, but really I don't need that at this point. What I'm looking for now, our next step, and go ahead and save this. And again, if you look up here, we're looking at the audio version. Now you may notice that you can see a little more of the screen as well. I expanded that because we're going to be looking at a different view now. We're going to be looking at the console view. And being an old school engineer, I like to have my console view very, very available. So what you can see here, I'll go over the sections. These are all the individual tracks. You can see here we have light pad, piano, stillness, harp, all those. Those are our tracks that we recorded. These are the audio tracks. Right here we have the master bus where everything is going. And then here we have the final master fader. This is the last thing it will hit before it gets exported. Now, I mix differently now. As of the last album that I recorded, I mixed and mastered it at the same time using a completely different process based on one product that I got, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And that actually inspired me to go back and remix and master the album that I did 2 albums ago, because after working with this product, I was on my way for a walk. I wanted to hear that album, the Forgotten Puppet Show, and one of the first songs on it is my one of my favorite songs. The first song on it is one of my favorite songs, Majestic View. Incidentally, was written in less than 24 hours for a demo for a television station that was going to be doing a music station that was going to be 24 hours, and they needed massive music, but they needed some stuff to test it. So I wrote a song really quick. My brother wrote a piece real quick, and unfortunately the station never came to be. But it was a great test to see what you can do when you're under pressure, which really helped me understand I can do that when I got to film scoring, where that became vital. I was really glad I had that to look back on and say, you know what, I can write good stuff in a short amount of time. So anyway, long story short, I was listening to Majestic View and it sounded horrible. And I was thinking, how would this sound if I put this product on it? And I'm sure it would sound much better. So I experimented with that one and then decided to redo the whole album. So to show you how I do it now, it used to be that I would just mix everything, get a good sound. I would take this master volume, lower it to like -6 dB, so I would have a lot of headroom, which is room for you to expand the sound, and send that out of the Cakewalk altogether and have that as a wave file, stereo wave file. Then I would open up my mastering program, which I was using Ozone 10, Ozone 9, one of the Ozone advanced ones. And then I would master it. I would export it back into Cakewalk, where I would balance all the songs for an album and then export them again. The way I do it now, I don't have to export out anymore because I decided to do a different process, and it's worked for the last couple albums and a couple singles that I did. So for now, I'm sticking to this as the process. I just go into here. I created an FX chain preset, and this is something that you're going to put on your master bus. And so I opened those up and I just called it Scotty Mastering Simple because that was just the thing that popped into my head. I only have the one because I haven't, I messed it up when I first did it and had to go back and redo it, but I was able to get everything done very, very simply. So let me open this up for you and see, you can see what it looks like. So I still have Isotope Ozone. That's still the main mastering thing. And then I added Oven. And this thing, let me tell you, is magical. I'm very curious to see how it's going to work on this because so much of what we have with Eduardo's stuff is already beautifully reverbed, so we may not need it for all of his stuff, which means we just need to do a quick rerouting. For Isotope Ozone, though, that is a little bit different. That is a mastering program in and of itself. So I have inserted that into my mastering chain instead of doing it externally. I've got a bunch of presets saved for different projects, but I do have like a generic template that I start with, Scott Basic. So I'll just go ahead and select that one, close this, and we can see we have an equalizer where I've done high and low shelves. We have a vintage tape. We have dynamics. We have an imager, so this is beautifully visual. I love this. We have an exciter and then the maximizer. So we are maximizing the sound without brick wall limiting. That's the big thing I hate. And then, of course, what might really help or not necessarily help us on this particular one, we have Oven. Why is it asking me to activate Oven? I have activated Oven. All right, we'll get back to that in a minute. I don't know why. This hasn't happened since I started working with it, and I activated it the day I bought it. Of course, because why wouldn't I? So I'm just going to shut off Oven for the moment, and I'm going to give you a run through the song and through Ozone and just get an idea of where we're at and how, when I mix with the mastering in mind. So this is why I've changed everything. Instead of mixing it, exporting it, finding that in the master things didn't really work and I had to go back and remix it and export it and go back into mastering, I would do that sometimes 5 or 6 times. Really time consuming, really annoying. So now I just master it as I mix it. I mix it with the mastering available so I can hear what it's going to sound like, and I don't have to keep going back and forth. I can do everything in a couple of steps, and it makes life so much easier. So I'm just going to go ahead and start playing the song, and I'll walk you through this as we go. This is our output volume over here, and so we can already see that this is really loud. We're probably going to bring that down. We're clipping over here. It's going red, so we're going to have some adjustments to make right off the bat. So let's just get ourselves into an area that's workable, and we don't have to blow out the whole system to do it. Maybe bring this down, compress this a little bit, not too much so that it's affecting the sound, but to give us a more even level. And see, that might be too much already. Look at how much it's affecting that. You can tell at the top how much it's affecting it by what's coming down in drips from the top. And I'm wondering if this is going to brick wall limit it, because I'm looking at this master fader over here and it's just giving me solid bars. It's not giving me a lot of variety. You'll see when I turn this off the difference I'm talking about. Watch down here. So it's almost just a solid bar altogether, but if I turn it off, get a little more movement. So we'll see. Now it's back to a solid bar again. It's really cutting everything. You can see how much red it's cutting down. We just don't want it to, you know, this might be too hot. It's distorting a little bit too, which we also don't want. And I've got this down pretty far. So this is really interesting. Very, very interesting. I think what I'm going to do, I don't think I've ever run across this before. So this is good. This is like an opportunity to do a training video while I learn something as well. And we still have to solve the oven activation issue, which should be simple. I did purchase a full license for that, so I'm not sure why. But that stuff happens every once in a while, and a lot of times, honestly, it's Windows glitches and not actual glitches with the software, but something in Windows that lost the activation verification or whatever. I've seen that happen. Like when I upgraded from Windows 8.1 to Windows 10, I had to reactivate all of my isotope software. I don't know why, but I had to do that. I had to go back into, with the serial numbers and everything and get everything re-registered. Very, very strange, but that happens. So it's not necessarily an issue with Oven. Could be something in the last Windows update, which I actually just recently had. I think it was after the last time I used Oven too. So there is that. So let's see what we have here. I really don't want to move the master fader down any more than I have to. I really want to more mark down what's sending, what is going from or going to that. So that's why I'm more likely to use this master here. But this could also be too loud too. Our main patch right here might just be too much. So if we bring that down, that puts us into some pretty reasonable levels now. That does sound a lot better. Let's see what happens when we work with the exciter a little bit, because we may find that we don't actually need to do that much with it. See, I was getting a little bit of distortion there, and it's usually this second one right here that causes that. So I'm going to move these back up a little bit, just give us a little bit of wiggle room and see how that sounds. So you can hear that crackling. So we want a little bit, because otherwise it'll get out of balance, and we don't want that. But yeah, that was definitely a problem from time to time. See, it's all over the place. Don't really think we need to boost much of anything here. But this widens the sound a little bit, kind of gives you more of a stereo scope. Too bad. That's actually sounding pretty good. But now the problem that we have is since we are missing oven, we're not getting all of the reverb, and so we're not able to really mix this properly. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and get that squared away, and I'll be right back. Okay, don't know what happened, but I was able to reactivate it, and everything's just fine. So let's take a quick look at oven here. It doesn't look like much. It looks like a lot of graphics and very little going on. But let me tell you, it is a very, very powerful tool. I haven't even really begun to dig into what it can do. When I got it, I opened it up. I tweaked a couple little things. I saved a preset, and I haven't changed it yet because it's been exactly what I've needed. So I just call it Basic 1 because sometimes I'm simple like that. And I'm wondering how this is going to work. I think we might have to do some rerouting really quick here. Let's listen. Yeah, that's going to be good for the percussion, but that is going to be way too much on the other instruments. So here's what we're going to do. I'm making this up as I go, by the way. This was not the plan as I was getting all this ready. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another bus. I'm going to make this for percussion. And I'm going to delete oven from the FX chain. I'm going to keep ozone there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add oven here. So let's see, what is that under? I think mastering. Yep, mastering, oven. If it was just in here, I could have moved it over, but because it was inside of the FX chain, I couldn't just drag it. So I had to reselect Basic 1. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to route all of the percussion now to the percussion bus. This bar shouldn't be here. That's a little glitch that happened when I was working on getting oven done. Okay, and it's there again. All right, that's fine. So what I want to do is I want to look at the modules. I want to add the in and out so we can see where all the routing is. So all of the ones that come from Eduardo's library, we really don't need to run through oven because they have beautiful reverbs on them, as I've talked about many, many times. So really everything up to track 7, all of that came from Nada. So starting with track 8, where we added bass, I honestly don't think I want to run that through oven because it's like a really much bigger reverb. So I'm going to run a simpler reverb. I'm just going to add a little bit of effects. Let's see, go to my reverb. So I've organized, I can't even speak anymore. I've organized all these by type. Some of them cross over, like in dynamics, you've got compressors, limiters, gates, all that stuff goes under dynamics because some of these are multi, like a compressor gate. Would I put it under both if I did a separate compressor gate? So I just put all the dynamics here, makes it a little bit easier. So that's going to be compressors, limiters, that sort of thing. Multi-band compressors, limiters, a little bit of punch. That could probably go somewhere else. But anyway, still, I still go back and forth over some of these. But effects are kind of like general effects. Or multi-effects. So like this is a phaser, but it also does a couple other things, and then some that aren't reverb or delay, because I've got delay, crusher, delay, distortion, reverb. So effects is anything, it's kind of like the catch-all for everything else. So I just want a gentle reverb, and this one is specific to Cakewalk. If you either have the effects pack or if you have a legacy version, I'm not sure if it comes in the new BandLab version. They might have purchased it with this, I'm not sure. Because I was with Cakewalk when they were owned by 12 Tone, back in the late 90s. So I have all the old plugins. So I'm just going to use a short and sweet reverb just to lighten up the bass a little bit. I'll give you an idea of what that sounds like. Let's see. Normally I do this on 2 different screens, so this is a little bit weird for me to be doing it all on one. That's oven. We don't need that open. Now, oven does take a little bit of resources. So I don't have it on while I'm writing the song. I thought about, having the mastering chain on while I'm writing as well. But oven does take up a bit of resources and it can kind of make things a little bit hinky on my system. So I just wait until it's done. I know what it's going to do is basically add reverb anyway, like a mastering reverb. So I don't really worry about it too much, but I do want to go back to the other view just so I can move ahead in the song where the bass is going a little bit. So I'll just start right here. Perfect. And we'll go back. Nope, not that window. Not that window. This window, that's the one I want. So we're just listening to bass. So not a lot of reverb, just a little bit to liven it up because the percussion is going to have reverb on it. We know all the pads and the harp and everything that we use through Nada is going to have reverb on it. So we just wanted to go ahead and just add just a touch to the bass. But I think that EQ is just a little bit too bassy for my taste. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to add a little bit of removing the low end here, just a little. Let's get that buzz out. That's not bad. See, we're still getting the low end, but we're not getting the, that buzz. And for new age music, you really don't want to have that buzz. That's just not going to help anybody. So we're going to go back to the percussion. We're going to move all of the percussion off of the master fader and over to the percussion fader. You see here metronome and preview. If you remember, those are the two that I unchecked when we were looking at the tracks. The metronome it would be another bus. We don't need to see that because we're not recording anything. And the preview we don't need because we're actually mixing now. So I'm just going to move everything else over. Another thing that we can do to make this visually easy is we can just change the color of the percussion and make all the percussion strips match the fader, so it's a lot easier to look at. The more that you work with more tracks, the more important this kind of stuff becomes. So all this is going to go under percussion, and you see it's just changing color as we go. And there we are. So everything else is headed to master. This all the percussion stuff is headed over here. So let's just solo the percussion bus, and we can listen to just percussion and get those mixed together nicely. You can see the bus is too hot, so something in here has got to go. But we don't just want to work with volumes. We want to spread things out in the sound field a little bit and give the song some depth. So, normally I would sit here and really analyze this stuff with great detail, but just so you guys can see generally how I do it. Here's what panning, we're looking at this row here, and you can see if you pan it, we'll just solo this, or we'll solo this one because this one's ongoing. That's to the right, to the left ear, going equally in both ears, or 3% to the left. So we want to spread this out a little bit so the sound's not all on top of each other. Maybe we want this one here in the center because it's really the one that goes through it. So maybe just a little off center since the synths are going to be centered. See, we've already got these two going in this direction. we've got this going all the way to the right. This is center. So we probably want to move the shakers over to the right instead of the left and really balance out that percussion a little bit. So you can hear now how everything kind of has a different place in the depth of your headphones going from left to right. Everything has its own space now. This volume might be a little too high still. That's better. See, and it's also easier to tell which one it is because you have a visual representation of where it is in the sound field. So when you're dealing with a lot of tracks, and you're hearing something that's really loud, it's a lot easier to pick out what it is if you have a lot of sounds to manage, especially if you're mixing other people's tracks. That can get really, really difficult. Okay, so that's enough with the percussion. We can unsolo that. We're going to mute that for a moment, and we're going to, let's see, how do we want to do this? Well, we want to save it, don't we? That's the most important thing. Okay, so we're going to save that. We can shrink this bass track down. We need to mix the volume in, but we got the reverb on it, which is what we wanted. Now this reverb, by the way, that we're listening to, let's go back to the console. I need to close that. You can close those and they'll still play through, by the way. So you don't need to keep them open on your screen unless you're adjusting them. If you need to bring them back up, you can just double click on it and boom, there it is. Again, don't need to see it all the time. Let's listen to this reverb really quick though, because I want to show you what Oven is actually doing. So I'm going to go back on solo here on percussion. That's with Oven on. And off. How dull. Not lively. Just like, why are you even hitting these instruments? There's no life in these things. But now, there you go. So that, my friends, is the beauty of Oven. So the other thing to point out, though, is that since I only have Oven here, and I only have the mastering chain here, these percussion plugins are not going to get run through the mastering chain. So what I would normally do, and I don't need to do it on this song because I think they're going to be, there's not a lot of percussion. I think it'll be balanced okay. But normally what I would do is I would have inserted the main mastering chain that I created here so that you would have Oven and Ozone. And then over here, I would just have Ozone and have taken Oven out. So I would have put the mastering chain on both, but I don't think we really need to go that far on this one. The percussion is not hot and heavy. I don't need to limit it. The EQ is fine. I don't really need to change anything. So again, I'm going to keep it very simple. And when you're mixing, the more simpler you can keep it, the better. Oftentimes for something like this, I might even be inclined to make more buses. Like I might have the harp and the music box on a bus by themselves, since they're very similar instruments. I might have, actually, I take back what I said. This is going to go through the master bus because it's routed to master. So after it's done processing Oven, it's going to go through the effects chain and through isotope. So it is going to get mastered. I forgot that I had it routed that way. I was thinking I was routing this to the final in and out. As I have the master bus goes to the in and out, this bus goes back into the master. So if you really want like a good visual representation of how that should work or how it should look, I guess this would probably be more appropriate. So you would have in order the way it would process. And when we go back, so the percussion is going to go here first, then into here, then into the final master output, which is going to be what's going to burn when we export our wave in MP3. So that gives us the percussion. We're going to go ahead and let the percussion play while we're mixing the other instruments. And now here's where we want to kind of integrate the two. On this particular song, I really don't need to add any more effects. This song doesn't require anything. I don't need to do any flanges or delays or anything like that. So there's really no reason for me to even be looking at this section up here now. I've got everything set the way it's going to be set. Really all I need is this bottom section from like, the bottom of these buttons down, from the panning to the fader and my track names, and that's it. In fact, I don't even need to look at the routing anymore because I've got everything routed the way I want. So if I want to remove that, I can shrink that down and leave more room for everything else I need. So the nice thing about Cakewalk by BandLab, and I'm sure the other digital audio workstations do this as well, is that you can integrate both of these together. So let's say I want to shrink this down. I'm going to put the mixer at the bottom. See where it turns blue? Now it integrates into one window. And since I only need to see up through where that pan dial is, that's all I really need right there. And everything else, I can look at these tracks, I can see what's playing, and even shrink these down so we get everything in. Now, the easiest way to make sure that you're maximizing as much as possible, click on the top one because that's where it's going to move from. And well, that's all we get. And that's just because it's a small window. I could probably take this section out as well, but I can never remember how to put it back. So probably the same way I take it out. So that being said, we are now ready to almost mix. I look back at my track sheet and I see I have a note. I wanted to take the Booyah kit, I remember, and do a fade in because you remember it kind of starts in with that little bit of a shakery, like light, fluffy type sound from the beginning. And I don't really want it to start that way. Let's take a listen to it. Yeah, where I really want it to be the hottest is probably here around measure 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go a little bit in front of that since there's no notes there. And I'm just going to go back to the beginning here where it hits just before its first note. And I'm going to hit my hotkey for fade. I just made that F. It's fading is something I do a lot, especially when I'm editing audiobooks or dialogue. So I'm just going to do a fade here. And now we're going to listen back and see how it sounds. Make sure that's what we want before we move on. Not bad, right? But the question is the percussion too hot for what we're working with here? And if you remember, I turned this synth down. So I'm going to bring this back up to 0 real quick. And I'm going to check a couple things. I'll show you what as we go on here. I just need to remove that block. Okay, there we go. And I can shrink this because, again, we're done with that fade, so I don't need that anymore. I can get those out of there. Okay. Going too high into the red, it's going to push everything else up as well, and we don't want that. sure that that master fader doesn't go into the red, but we want to get it close, and then we can mix from there. There we go. Getting a little bit of distortion there, which we don't want. Okay, so we're getting a little bit of low end buzz here, so we may need to manipulate the EQing a little bit. We'll see. So we need to narrow down where that's coming from because I don't remember what track that is. So we're going to just take the first four, we'll solo those and see if it's coming from one of those. We're going to use process of elimination. It is. So I can tell by the waveforms it's one of the two that starts here. So we'll see. We'll start with, I don't think it's the piano. We'll start with the stillness. Oh, maybe it is the piano. Yep, that sounds horrible. So here's what we're going to do. Since we know that it's isolated to that channel, what we want to do is we want to go into the EQ here, and we're going to mess with this a little bit. We're going to turn it on. That's the first part. And then it's hard to do from this view, so I'm just going to undock this here. We'll put it back in a minute. Okay, so we want the EQ, and I definitely want the low shelf. Maybe we'll need to move the high shelf a little bit too. Let's play through it. Okay. Is it too much though? Okay, so if you're not too familiar with EQ, this is your low end on the left, this is your high end on the right. So what I did is I lowered some of that low end to take some of that out. Lowering it does not give you more low end. Dropping it down will give you less low end, just as dropping down the high will give you less high end. It's just a little trick, so we get the sound, but we don't get all that rumbling distortion that's making the song sound awful. So so there's that. Now we can go ahead and redock this. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and save real quick because we've made a lot of changes. And boom. Much better, doesn't it? Yes, we lost a little bit of low end, but it was really just that buzzing. We're still getting the tone, which is what we want. Was a little bit more buzz, but I did raise the volume, so it's like a slight bit of distortion on it, but I actually like that. I think that works a little bit. I mean, you know, new age music can have distortion in it. That's fine. It's just you don't want that heavy, chunky, distorted rock guitar sound, but a little bit of buzz in there is not necessarily a bad thing. What we had in there earlier was hideous. And so we took it out. So far, I'm liking what I'm hearing. There's really not a lot of mixing that I have to do. I do want to look at the harp and the music box though, because I think I'm going to find it. I'm going to want to balance those a little bit. So let's find a spot where they're both playing. Here we go. And we're just going to solo those and see if we need to split pan them at all. What I mentioned earlier that I wanted to split them off into a separate bus, and I think that's exactly what I am going to do. So I'm going to insert another bus. We're going to move it where it should be. A lot of times I would have this all planned out ahead, of course, but I don't, because I wanted you guys to enjoy every moment of this insanity. So we're going to call this Harp Plus. It's the harp and the music box. We're going to go ahead and go back to our in and out, and then we're going to color this. Let's color this like a green. You definitely want massive visual differences from things that are going to be next to each other. You don't need to color the individual tracks because we're going to change it to Harp Plus. And the music box, Harp Plus. And again, this will be going to the master, so this will again hit ozone when it gets there. So let's see how this sounds now. So if we want to, if let's say we like to balance between these two instruments, but it's too quiet in the song, instead of moving both of these, or we could make these we could group these together, these faders as they're balanced, so that when you move one, it moves the other. Or you can do the simple thing, which is to just put them on a bus and move the master bus fader instead of the individual volumes. It's a balance. You don't want to, you want to have enough volume coming from the individual tracks where the bus doesn't have to work that hard, because you don't want to push limits on anything. But so you want to kind of find a balance between both. You want to have a decent amount of volume coming from your individual tracks sending to your bus and sounding really good, and then the bus will control the final fine-tuning of the volume in the overall mix. I hope I explained that well. I would ask you guys how I'm doing, but I couldn't hear you answer, so there's kind of no reason, but feel free to write your comments in on the YouTube video. For some reason, that's always open. So we made a lot of changes again, so we want to do a quick save, and again, just double check our balance. Now, just because I'm isolating these two instruments together doesn't mean I necessarily want an exact balance between the two of them. But in this case, I do, because these are working together and kind of, working on their own, but they're working together. They're both plucky instruments. They're both following that same, rhythm. So I definitely want to keep those together in the mix. And now that's why I balance those two so that they sound evenly together. Otherwise, I would have just kept them as individual tracks. So again, we don't need the in and out for anything. We can see our panning and volume again. And let's listen to this all together. So these controls up here, by the way, are the masters. If I hit this, it mutes everything. If I hit this, it unsolos everything I've got soloed, and then we'll solo everything if I want it all soloed, it's kind of weird. If you've soloed a bunch of stuff individually and you want to unsolo it, it's a little more useful. I really feel like this main pad sound is just dominating everything a little too much. tell I'm so uncomfortable moving these things around because I never have them on one screen. I always have the mixer in full on my second monitor. So that's why all that just happened. But while we're listening, I'm like, this is actually a pretty good mix. I didn't really need to mix a whole lot of this as I went because these sounds kind of do them for themselves. But now we're going to get into the bass here and some of the other stuff. So just want to check each thing and make sure it sounds good and blended well. Now you might be saying, Scott, that's a percussive instrument. Why is it not on the percussive bus? Well, remember this one comes from Nada and it's got a beautiful reverb on it already. It's got a nice delay on there. We don't need to add any effects to it. So I didn't need to put it on the percussion bus that runs to Oven to give it even more reverb. If you put too much reverb on things, it starts to sound muddy and crappy. And unless you're really going for a specific reverb sound like that, I shouldn't say crappy because it depends on what you're doing with it. Unless you're really going for something like that, whereas you would probably more put a reverb on that individual channel that has an incredible depth, like a cathedral reverb or something like that. But for the purposes of this, it's already sounding beautiful. I don't need to do anything. And that's one of the things I've said many times I love about Eduardo's libraries is I don't need to do a whole lot to them. They're beautiful right out of the box. But it might be a little too loud. Now this overtone singing is going to kind of work similar to the bass, so I don't want to put those together. I want to spread that low end a little bit left and right. So the bass, I always put a little bit to the left. I always think in terms of where a bass is with a rock band, and that's just kind of where bass always goes for me. But since we're using this overtone voice, we don't want to put all that low end on the right side. Remember, we've also got that piano track that's got low end on it too, and that one's in the middle. So we're just going to move that to the right a little bit. And here comes some more bass. We can hear how it sounds. We're taking the pad away so we can hear everything else in the mix, and then we'll blend the pad back in. Really nice. Okay, we're on a different pad anyway, so we had already gotten off of that by the time I was done, so I'm just going to double check the volume on that. See, this is a much lighter pad than our, ironically, it's much lighter pad than our light pad. Our light pad is actually kind of rich, which is why I had to drop the volume down on it so much because it was really kind of overtaking the overall sound and volume. So we've got a pretty good mix right now. I'm just going to check a little bit later in the song. Since we did a lot of repeats, the song doesn't have a lot of changes in it, so there's not a lot to cover and double check and make sure that it's all sounding good because we don't have a lot of tracks to work with here and we've already got a good mix. So one thing we do want to notice and take note of is our volume from the quieter pad to the main pad, which has more boost in volume to it. So we're looking at track 3 right here, Stillness, and then going into track 1, Light Pad. And we want to make sure that this isn't too quiet and this isn't too loud as we make the transition. We want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and they sound good together. No, we've got a bunch of extra space at the end. If you're doing an album, you want, I usually add 2 seconds from the end of the last bit of audio, and then 1 second at the beginning. So that it gives you like 3 seconds in between songs, and so it's enough for a song to end for the track to switch, whether you're on like a CD or doing MP3s through, like iTunes or Windows Media Player or something like that. Gives you enough so that nothing gets cut off, but it doesn't give you a whole lot of time between tracks where you think it's not playing. So that's what I usually do. So if this were our final, you would have like, I would move it over to here, like basically 1 second. And then at the end, I would clip it off to 2 seconds. So now the song is mixed. I'm very happy with it. I don't feel like we really need to do anything else as far as it goes. This is a really simple one. Before the video's over, I'm going to load up a different one to show you something a little more complicated really quick. But here is something very, very important. We do not want to export this with oven or isotope on. The first track that we want to bounce to, we're going to add 2 more. And the first one we want to do is just the a mix and then the master. So we're going to have our rough dry mix and then master. So the first one, we're going to turn off all of the mastering, right? So oven is off and ozone is off. And we're just going to take this and we're going to mix it down. Always save, always save. We're going to mix it down to the mix track really quick. And we want to make sure it's in stereo, obviously, but we want it dry. Okay, so here's what we're listening to now. Oh, you know what though? Actually, that's not going to work for this. Because I did this a little bit differently, it won't work, because normally I'm applying oven to the entire mix and not just certain tracks. So since I had to break it up and I'm only using oven on the percussion, we're going to not have our dry mix track. We can always rebounce it if we need to. We're going to go straight to master. I'm so glad I realized that before I wasted time doing that. Boy, it's not only that I'm doing this while I'm talking, which I've never done, but I'm also running into situations that I've never run into before. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this, and then we'll bounce it to the mastering track. But first, we have to turn everything back on, don't we? So now oven and our FX chain, which is just isotope now, is back on, and we're going to bounce it to the track and make sure that everything looks good volume-wise, nothing's peaking or crackling, and go from there. And stereo, very important. Dithering sounds kind of like a horror movie. It's not, but sometimes it is. Okay, so I went ahead and paused the video because there was no reason for you to sit there and just watch that bar, like I said earlier. I value your time too, But this being the case now, if I hit play, we're going to hear all the individual tracks and the mix together. That's going to sound horrible, so let's not put ourselves through that. We're going to mute everything else and just listen to the master. We can see, though, first, we can see visually that this did not push the limits. We do have a little bit of wiggle room here. Nothing is scraping the top or the bottom, so we do have room. We'll keep an eye on our master fader here. Where is our master fader? There it is. We'll keep an eye on that and see how that goes and maybe adjust that before we export it. Normally, I would do that as I'm bouncing it, but since we had to skip that other step, had to do things a little bit differently than my new normal process. But let's just spot in the middle here where it's kind of the hottest, one of the hottest spots in the song. Oh, you know what else is important? Haha. We don't need to hear the mastering anymore because it's already baked into our master. So now if we have it on, that's just playing it twice. There we go. like where it gets like right up to the edge of the red, or sometimes maybe a little over that. But yeah, it isn't. So as I'm checking the peaks here, it sounds really good. See if there's any other like major swells or anything. You might listen to that harp and say, well, it's a little bit in the background, but you don't want every instrument out front. Sometimes you just want sounds that are in the background. Sometimes you want sounds that are in the foreground. You want a nice blend in your sound field. And for me, that harp is a little bit plucky. It might be a little bit too much. I liked it there for the atmosphere, but not for that attack as much. So I wanted to push that in the background a little bit so that you still got the presence of it without getting hit with that harsh attack, So that's basically the song, guys. Normally what I would do here is I would export it as a wave, and then I will take another template that's like this and I'll import all the final waves for the album. I'll clip the beginning and end wherever I need to do that, move it into position so that so it starts where it needs to start and the music starts at that 1 second mark, or right about 1 second. That was just a rough thing right there. I didn't do that with technicality. And then I will volume balance all of the songs so that the loudest song and the quietest song, move them in range and move all the songs in that range so that they all work as an album, and that you don't hit one song and it's way too quiet and another song and it's way too loud, like really leveling the volumes between the songs. And then I export them as final waves, and then I export them again as MP3s, because some sites that you'll upload to will require MP3s. Some sites that you'll load to will require the waveform. I'm uploading through DistroKid. I think DistroKid is waves. I think Bandcamp is also wave, if I remember right. I could be wrong on that, but I think they're both wave. But if I'm uploading to my iPod, or if I want to send a copy of the album to somebody, I don't necessarily need to send them the wave files. I can just send them the MP3s, and saves them the time to download it, saves them the space on whatever their device is as well. So that's basically it, guys, for this one. I really dig this tune. I could see this going on the next possible Mental Sauna album, depending what happens with Kelly. I would say keep an eye out for it. What are we? Almost June, probably August. I would say look for the Mental Sauna 6 or whatever my new album is. You can keep up on the website. It always has the newest projects on the homepage, scotthaskin.com. But I did promise you guys one other thing. By the way, so we don't really need anything with this sheet anymore. We did make some changes to it, so I've gone ahead and saved it. I'm also going to resave it as a PDF, so I've got that backup version. You know me, I have to have more than one version of everything in case something disappears. I'm kind of ridiculous like that, but you know what? It has saved me many times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to load another song really quick so that you can get a better idea of the power of Oven. And be back in a minute, which will be like a second for you guys. Okay, before I wrap up this video series, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you found this interesting / helpful / beneficial, whatever you might. There's two things we need to do before I show you the song and what a difference Oven makes and why I use it now. And I may do even a whole separate video on that. I probably will under my audio tips series. There's one other thing I do. I keep a master spreadsheet of all the songs I've ever written. 1, 2, 5, 6. That's my current one. And this is, what did I call this song? It was Thinkful Song for with Nada for Video. Now, if I, way to spell Haskin. If I do end up using this on the album, or I do something different with it, then I will change the title, of course, to whatever that title might be. I don't remember what the date was that I finished. I think it was yesterday, 5/20/2023. And this is for the composing video. And I think I'll fill this all in later. Let's see. I know that it was pads, harp, percussion. Okay. Sold would be if I wrote it and sold it to somebody else. It was in C major. Style is New Age. Time is what the final time of the song is. Like once I've exported out the final clip, the beginning and the end and all that, what's the time that the song will be released as? Or if it's a film cue, how long is the actual film cue, regardless of what they put in and use in the film. If they shorten it or if they, stretch the audio or whatever, that goes on the cue sheet to ASCAP. Not something I worry about for my purposes of what I actually created. I think the tempo was 110, but I'm just going to leave that blank for now because I'm not sure and I don't want to put something in there and then forget about it later. So that's that. So this song is called Majestic View. It's the first song off of my album, The Forgotten Puppet Show, written many, many years ago for that television station I was telling you about. I'm just going to play a little bit because I really want to show you the difference of what Oven can do. As you can see right here, I've got the effects chain turned off. That would be on, that's off. So here's what the song sounds like, and then we'll turn Oven on and listen to it again. Not bad, it's listenable because I remixed it. This is the remixed version from the one that I heard that I just didn't like and couldn't believe that was me mixing it. So here's the song. Right, kind of dry, not bad, but kind of dry. Here's the song with the mastering and Oven. What a massive difference that plugin makes. I mean, seriously, it just makes everything all in one shot just sounds so much bigger. I could put in a chain of plugins that would do that and really just work them for, all they're worth on every song, or I can just put Oven on it and just, make those slight adjustments. Like I said, I didn't tweak it very much from what it comes with when you just first open it. I just made a couple of modifications, saved it as my basic one, and that is what I pull up every time. So, you can hear the difference, massive difference. I would have put a couple other plugins in. If I wasn't using Oven, I would have had a different reverb, probably a lighter reverb on there, maybe a reverb per bus, as opposed to just doing a master reverb over the whole thing. But in this case, I really didn't need to. I have very little effects. I specifically have this reverb on a ripple effect. I've got a couple of specific, like I wanted the reverb on the kick to be a little bit bigger. I'm sorry, that's a compressor on the kick, not a reverb. The snare has a bit of a reverb on it that's above what Oven will do, because I want the snare individually to stand out a little bit more, but it's very subtle. So not a lot in the way of effects on this particular song, but I do have more buses. I have a bus for all the orchestra sounds. I have a bus for all the synthesizers, one for the drums, and then one for percussion. So drums would be the drum kit and everything that comes with that, and then percussion would be anything else like shakers, anything else that I have, which is really ended up just to be this one track, just the vibes. So I didn't really need a bus for that. Because I think I had a couple other tracks that I dropped out, and I just left it on the bus when that was done. So it's a little more complex of a mix. There's more tracks. There's a lot more going on. But I just wanted to give you an idea of why I use Oven, how simple it is to use, and what a hell of a difference it makes. And that's why I mix with it on, because if I mix with it off, Yes, I'll get a good mix, but I'm going to get something completely different from my final. I'm going to do all the work of fine tuning the mastering and then export it, go back, and then find out it's all wrong and I have to do it. So that's why I changed the process to do it all in house, all at the same time. I can hear the mastering while I'm mixing, and it's right now, it's working a lot better for me. It has shaved hours off of my mixes, especially for an album. So I'm a big fan of it. But anyway, guys, that is our video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Feel free to leave comments. Feel free to share this with other people, and go check out on Best Service Eduardo Taralante's libraries. The link will be in the notes here on YouTube. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in another one. Keep an eye out for me doing an audio tip just on Oven. I may or may not. I don't know. We'll see. I always say I won't do it, and then I do it. So it's very possible. Anyway, cheers.